Very warm welcome to KuberTENes birthday party. So today we're celebrating, so just a reminder, we're celebrating today 10 years Kubernetes with a summary of different meetups coming together actually to celebrate that event. And we're talking about 5 meetups overall. And Ricardo, do you want to quickly introduce DevOps Vienna?
Yes.
You need to take both.
Thank you very much. So the meetup has been going on for a while. We talk about DevOps. DevOps is an old world. Now we talk about platforms and other things. We organize a meetup every month. I work at Square. I've been doing this for a year almost. This meetup is not just by Square. It happens that I work for Square, and right now I'm the organizer, but we welcome companies to host it. We welcome people to speak there, and we are looking forward for you to attend. I mean, I've seen already many faces that have attended it before. And so if you have talks, if you would like to help organize it or host it, just come by and say hello. Thank you.
Eric, quick intro to the next 2, I think, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Both of them? Just the Vienna DevOps and Security. Okay. Yeah. Actually, also Cloud Native Austria organization, so I'm not sure. But Vienna DevOps and Security Meetup, it already exists before I started to organize it, but I overtook it at 2017. It's the name already tells it. It's about DevOps and security. It's one of the, I think also Vienna DevOps Meetup and Vienna DevOps and Security Meetup coexist quite a while, and they also have a lot of DevOps topics. And for sure, since a while, as Cloud Native arises, and we also have a lot of topics like Kubernetes, platform engineering, and so on. And for sure, we are always looking for sponsors and location hosting stuff, and also interesting content. So yeah, if you have anything to share with your community, feel free to contact me.
Next one is Malte for Cloud Native Computing Vienna.
Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. Great to be here again. Thanks, Tom, for giving the space here. Really cool to be here again. Cloud Native Computing Vienna, we are existing since 2018. Doing meetups in this space, I guess. And also in this space a lot. So thanks again. Also thanks to Wissas for sponsoring the stream and the recording. Also, thanks a lot. And yeah, I mean, it is great if you have talks, and now you have to choose. How do you choose? Of course, you choose the one with by throwing the dice. Thanks for being here, and have a good evening.
Okay, so hello everyone. So I'm representing Cloud Native Austria here. And the funny thing is, in fact, we are no meetup. So we are more here for getting meetups together. So thanks to all of the other meetups who are co-hosting today. And we are also organizing the Kubernetes Community Days in Austria, where Katharina will tell us a bit more about. I by myself, I will lead you to the evening today. And with this, I will give back to Tom, because he always also has to say something about the platform engineering thing.
Sure, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, first of all, quick intro. Platform Engineering Vienna has the soft launch today. It's a meetup series we're starting today, and as Kubernetes provides already a platform where you can build platforms on top. Now it's 10 years Kubernetes, starting it today. I think that it's a coincidence, wasn't planned. But the most important thing, big kudos to everyone from Cloud Native Austria for connecting the dots, for connecting the meetup, and actually bringing the people together. And I think when we look at the Cloud Native area, it's very important. So I think it's valid a round of applause, because it's not coming without any effort. Very quick intro about Dynatrace. We're here in the office of Dynatrace, just to mention that, hosting that. And little bit of an intro what we're doing. First of all, our main mission is to make software run perfectly, but also securely. And we're doing that by providing insights into running applications on cloud-native stacks, also on bare metal, even on mainframes. So very broad scale. Today, we're focusing mainly on cloud-native technology. Sidetrack, Dynatrace, even though we're a big company, overall 4,500 persons worldwide, we're a company founded in Linz, and it's 19 years ago. So with 19 years, you can say, great, we're out of puberty. That's how it feels like, it's good. And when we look at the target market, we're targeting the 15,000 biggest companies in the world. And when we look at the Fortune 100 biggest companies in the world, more than 70% of them are our customers. Brand names there, Walmart, NASA, governmental sectors, health sectors. That's where we spread. If you want to know more, please just approach us. You won't find the people on those pictures, but you will find people with that swag if you want to learn more. And that's basically it, just a quick intro. And the most important part, big question, some of you maybe already heard it, who is into multitasking of you? If not, today is the day to multitask, talking, connecting with people, drinking and eating. If you're into that, raise the hand. I think that's also what we do because we celebrate today. Great to see the hands. And with that, I want to hand over to David.
Yeah, so we have already heard today is also the kickoff of our platform engineering Vienna meetup group. And so I am here to say basically a few words about that and also answer the question, why is this actually the perfect event to kick off this whole thing, additional to the other great meetup groups hosting here today. So to figure this out, what is platform engineering? It's an emergent field that tackles the growing complexity in our mostly cloud-native environments. So we started off with, there are some people doing development, some people doing operations, and sometimes they interact with each other. With developments in this area, especially tools like Kubernetes, we slowly were able to, adapt new processes where things like that could be combined, done in a team that is in charge of everything. But that also came, with a lot of complexity, and everyone needed to know how to tackle this. So platform engineering now goes a step ahead and extract some of that complexity out into a platform and specific people, providing a set of tools and infrastructure and enabling developers to do their job and get some of that cognitive load away. So somehow like this, you can still do your nice process, but you have a platform underneath where people actually take away a little bit of that overhead. And in the meanwhile, while all of this process stuff was going on, Kubernetes was, for a lot of that, the technical enabler by orchestrating workloads, abstracting infrastructure, giving you configuration as code. And now, in the later development, also a nice pattern and a unified way to access all of these things that run underneath. So this was just a very short walk over the history, of course, but to finally then answer the question, why is this 10-year anniversary the perfect time to kick off the platform engineering meetup group? Because all of this emerged together, Kubernetes on the technical level, DevOps, platform engineering on the process level, and those things will also keep growing alongside, and it's very to have a forum to talk about it. So happy birthday, and yeah, stay tuned about more about this meetup group.
Okay, so thank you, and I hope we'll see each other again at one of the next working group, platform engineering meetups. As you might know, today is birthday party of Kubernetes, right? And Kubernetes itself, in my opinion, is mostly about people and the people who are dealing with the product and who are contributing, who are talking about it, and so on. And therefore, the main idea of the first talk we have here is to ask some people how they went into the Kubernetes world and how their experience was. And with this, we have no order, or do we have an order?
I don't know.
Then, Eric, the stage is yours.
Okay, so yeah, actually it's the first time when I have a talk and I don't need to introduce myself because the whole talk is about my story. Yeah, so this is about my cloud native journey. First, I introduce, follow along my cloud native journey. We'll go to each one separately. So just take from this, I started in IT consulting and then I moved forward and built up a lot of things, community, meetups, and different talks, and also actually two companies. And yeah, and maybe also for you, a success story, this is like what in the end happens out of my knowledge in cloud native and all this spirit, which happens in Austria. Yeah. This is the last point that I want to mention afterwards. Yeah, so first point, when was the first time I basically jumped into container technologies was I was an IT consultant, started in June 2014. So actually I have kind of the same timeline as Kubernetes, as you see. Yeah, first I have like going into software development, but there was like the time, I think it was 2016 or so, 2015, when I used Docker already. And yeah, first it was just trying out a bit and to use it for software development, shipping, cruising. And I was really enthusiastic because I really liked how you could use Docker to ship like software. And yeah, this was my personal experience. And in the end of I think the last year when I worked at IT consultant, I already had experience with Kubernetes and also OpenShift. There was a big project where I didn't administrate the cluster, but I did a lot of YAML engineering, I would say. And beside this, yeah, also a lot of stuff happened. The first release was introduced in September 2014. And the CNCF was founded as well 1 year later. And this shows somehow, also for me personally, it shows that the CNCF, there is a big association which also drives the spirit of Kubernetes and also the open source spirit. And with with the shift of OpenShift to another Kubernetes container orchestrator to Kubernetes, it also shows that also there's kind of a business opportunity for a lot of companies, maybe. Yeah. By the way, I just put out some points that was for me like what I saw like very important for me, or I saw, okay, there is something changing, or this give me some impact for me personally. I think break something. Try to plug it out and in again.
You did.
Okay, works again. Yeah, next point on the timeline is sorry. That I come more into so after I dig into the technologies, I also see, as Thomas already mentioned, that all the open source stuff is a lot about people. And this was also the reason why I came more into meetups. First, for sure, I visited some. And then I also tried to give some back. And actually, my first meetup was organized, was a Kubernetes meetup together with Red Hat. with the Vienna DevOps and Security meetup group, and we did an OpenShift workshop hosted in the company which I was working at this time. And what also was interesting, and this is just probably for Austria true, but this is where I live and so where I have a lot of experience. At this time, what was very interesting, maybe you were at at different meetups at this time as well as I did. Red Hat was everywhere, basically. Yeah, so actually, there were just two people, like Udo Urbanschitz, yeah, and the second one, I don't remember his name, but they were at each DevOps meetup. They were there sponsoring something, having talks and so on. And you saw that Red Hat want to introduce their ecosystem also in Austria and want to go into the market a bit, building up a partner system and so. This also, why I'm telling this, this also showed me that, okay, out of Kubernetes, even in Austria, there's business opportunity. There are companies that are moving into this direction and also moving with Kubernetes and the whole ecosystem into also in the business into this direction. Then, after organizing meetups, my next step was also share knowledge or share my experience. And it happened to be that my first talk about Kubernetes was on the DevOps Con Munich in 2017. And it was basically infrastructure as code and building up a Kubernetes cluster in 300 seconds in production. And yeah, you see, beside my story, my knowledge evolves, and also, actually, it was in this year. I think it was like a blast for the whole CNCF. I think the growth does totally accelerates. As you see, the CNCF growth, I took it out of the report from them from this year. They had in the start of 2017, there's 63 members and 4 projects, and after this year, they have more than doubled it. These are just 2 metrics. They doubled also other metrics, but you see that there are a lot of CNCF members come and join to the community and supporting this technology. And and also there are a lot of people building up projects and supporting also the technology. Yeah. And what's also interesting that probably Google was for sure also, also the Google Cloud Platform already supported it from the very beginning, Kubernetes managed service. But at this time, also Azure and with AKS and EKS and on AWS was launched at preview. So you can see that also the cloud provider now dig into this important service Kubernetes and make it available for their customers. And yeah, at this time, all the big 3 cloud providers have the Kubernetes service, a managed Kubernetes service launched. Yeah, and personally, this was also a lot of, you saw already a lot of reasons that I saw, and was enough reason for me to try to build up a company out of this, based on this, that I see, okay, personally, I love this technology. I love Kubernetes. I love how the cloud native technology is working with them and so on, and also the community. And I thought, okay, let's build on this, make business out of this. And first of all, searching for people that have like-minded and also want to, or are interested into these technologies and want to build up beside the business, building up knowledge, building cool services, building up also community. And this was at the beginning already the goal, like doing DevOps, Cloud Native, and Kubernetes. And yeah, the first year actually was for me a big learning curve. Not just the cloud native stuff, but also building up the company. I was studying technical maths and not any economic stuff. So it was completely new for me, like legal and marketing stuff. I never did this before. So this was also like a challenge for me. But also at this time, you see 2018's AWS and AKS, so a year after, they are already a full general availability. Also the services, Kubernetes services are full generally available. And again, the CNCF grew by 130%. Also, again, more than doubled their memberships. So it's also interesting that the CNCF community still has enormous amount of growth this year. Yeah, then personally, after I founded the first company, it was like Einzelunternehmen, and I moved it to a GmbH, and it was also connected to that we out of my person and doing everything on my own. There were four other people that joining us and joining with us, and we're building up a lot of community stuff at this time. As I wrote down I looked it up, 8 meetups and 4 conferences where we participate as either sponsors or speakers or organizers. And and we saw that with the whole business concept, and there's still a lot of growth in the community, and we saw the market with all this stuff like cloud provider are going into this direction, other companies going direction, and also there are a lot of users that using this, and for sure Wizards delivers like consultancy, and they also need probably support with this kind of technologies because they are new to them. And CNCF states on their report, and this was also like kind of my experience at this time, the cloud native, the adoption becomes really mainstream. Everyone wants to go on Kubernetes. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a startup or like a big enterprise company. So, and Kubernetes was the way to go. Even probably for a smaller would be not the best way, but it doesn't matter. Anyone wants to go to Kubernetes, and also container were already like everywhere in place, and like 80 or 90% of workloads already running on container. Yeah, and then you probably already you know this 2019 there was a big hot topic. The Kubernetes operators suddenly came into place, and yeah, also I basically go with this topic and made some talks about it in Germany and Austria. And you see that 2019, I think the technology was already out there time before, but I think the big change was that the operator SDK at May 2019 has its first real release. There had some pre-releases before, but there was not a stable one. And I think this really help to to speed up the process with Kubernetes operators. And it was quite interesting that at this time, or like a few months later, everyone want to do Kubernetes operators, want to develop new shit and so on. You saw some cool use cases somewhere which work somehow. But developing is probably fun, but then I don't know if you ever have developed a Kubernetes operator. But then when you come to operating this stuff, and you need to update it again with some versions, you really need to be careful that you don't break the whole system again. So yeah, to maintaining a Kubernetes operator, so it's really something that you need to be careful of. And so this I think was like a pitfall what you can. I think at this time a lot of companies and people fall into it. Yeah, and 2020, we continue our course. We saw the market go into the right direction, and we just continued everything going. We're the first community certified server provider, I think, for nearly 3 years, and Kubernetes trainings partner, and this basically then what pops out after the whole story. What I told you before, that we're now a company, of sponsor, so community versus sharing knowledge and so on. And this is not probably a bit marketing, but this should show you that out of this spirit here, for me personally, it's like a real big success story. It came from, hey, this interesting technology here, to, okay, I want to build up a company out of this, and also building up a community. And you see that there's still such a lot that's going on in the community. We now have 5 different meetups here coming together. It's like really awesome. I really I appreciate that we really are connected. You see that the community not working against each other. They're really coming together. And this is, I think, the point here. And we have another program like the Kubestronaut program now. So there's still something new in the Kubernetes world, in the community world, and yeah, I think I'm done here. I just can show you some figures. So there's still a lot. There is already a lot in production, but there's still more to come. So it seems that the cloud native era has still no end, and yeah, we can look into the future with another cloud native stuff and things. Here are some references, and yeah, if you want to connect, feel free. This is my LinkedIn QR code. So looking forward to it. So thank you, and yeah, would love to hear your story afterwards. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. So it was pretty interesting to get this view from an organization which grew with Cloud Native. But now let's come to another more user-centric story, I think. So Niels, I think it's your time now.
Yeah, thank you. So I asked Thomas before if I need to prepare some slides, and he just said no. So no slides from my side. But I think it's fine. So everyone has now heard the story of Kubernetes. I would like to tell a little bit my story with Kubernetes. And things have started, I think, years ago. So it started not in the industry like many of us. It more started in the home labs area, where I deployed Home Assistant and automation. It's not working. Test. It's working now. Fine. And is this? Okay, I see. Great. So everything working now? Nice. Okay. Back to my journey. So I started my Kubernetes stuff in my home lab, basically. So at the beginning, everything started with the Raspberry Pi and some Docker containers. Before it was without Docker containers, so a lot of pain deploying new software, setting things up, keeping things in sync, doing disaster recovery from time to time. Yeah. And over the time, things have changed. So I tried everything with Docker. So this was better, but still problematically. And around, I think it was 2018, so I needed to check my commits, because I don't remember totally when the starting point was. But I was more and more into having something that is more production ready, where I don't need to spend all my free time in maintaining my home lab. So because I want to do other things in my free time, and not only home operations. And at this point, I had my first touch point with Kubernetes, and it was just horrible. It was such a lot of things, and it was really complex and really hard to understand. Also, this little Raspberry Pi is just struggling with the workload, and the SD card is crashing, and so I gave up at the first run. But I came back, of course, and I've had an interesting project in my company at this time, and here also same journey. We started with Docker containers and deploying Docker containers to production, rolling out new software releases, trying to iterate fast. Nothing that has really worked well together. And at the end of 2018, was around 4 weeks before Christmas, my boss came to me and said, hey, we need to bring this MVP project now to high scale for a US customer, and US and Canada networking, whatever. And I said, okay, let's try this with Kubernetes. And he said, will this work? I said, yeah, it will work. So I have no idea if this will work, of course, but I was really opportunistic to bring this together. And at the end, we made it, or I made it. At this time, projects are mostly done by one person with the knowledge and the technology. And of course, not everything was 100% perfect, but things were working. The customer at the end has not bought the project, but our first cluster was up, and I think it's still running. So I've left the company, so I'm not totally sure if it's still running or if there's a new iteration of it. But basically this has worked well. Scaling out was working well, and this was the starting point somehow. So I gave my home lab a new try, and things has worked. So with new hardware, of course, because these little Raspberry Pis are maybe not the best choice. Yeah. And from there on, a new customer went, or we migrated bare metal projects to Google Cloud as the first project, well, with a bigger team. So it was also quite a challenge because, yeah, there was a bigger team, but not everyone has the knowledge. So we created a lot of big Helm charts, with a lot of hours in, and a lot of YAML, and a lot of code templating, and yeah. But also this was a lot of fun. And back to my home lab, I restarted everything from scratch. I joined a community, or I searched for people that are doing the same stuff at home, and to grow the knowledge and to get more into other ideas and patterns to adapt. And I found the, I stumbled over the Kubernetes at Home community. Now it's named the Home Labs community, so they have rebranded somehow. And they have some really interesting stuff. So they are doing things with GitOps, and most of them have adopted something like FluxCD. Some of them were on the Argo way, and it was so impressive, and things are just working at some point. Of course, at the beginning, it was a lot of, okay, how does this thing get together? What do I need? And all these parts. And after some, first you have all the persons there, you can ask questions, there's a Discord, and so on. Yeah, and at some point it was just like, yeah, it's working. So with Flux and GitOps, you can just roll out all your release or your stuff, and you can upgrade them with Renovate. And this was like, hey, all my pain is gone, and I have free time now, and I can do other things. Of course, sometimes it's broken still, but yeah, I think we all know that. Yeah, later then we have adopted also this technology in the company. And yeah, I personally cannot imagine a world without Kubernetes today. And I think, yeah, it will still continue, and there's still a lot of great things, still a lot of new challenges by bringing legacy software stacks to the cloud or to Kubernetes. And yeah, let's see what happens in the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. So, in the meanwhile, while Thomas is building something, how many people of you are actively using Kubernetes at the moment? Okay, and how many of you were scared and confused when you dealt with Kubernetes the first time? Okay, and how many of you tried to SSH into a Kubernetes container when they started them?
Sure.
Perfect, so I'm not alone, right? So let's go to the next talk. I think you're the next one. Do we have another speaker? No, you're the last one, right? Everyone asked me if they need slides, and I said no.
Surprise.
It's like in school. Okay, so Daniel, the stage is yours.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be here today. Talk to you guys. When I prepared this talk, I was like, that's actually a nice opportunity to think how I actually got here. And as things are, careers change. Careers are not linear. Sometimes you end up completely in a Sometimes you end up in a completely different place where you think or where you want to start out. And actually, maybe that's even my story, or is my story. Classic. All right. So first of all, happy 10th anniversary to Kubernetes, and it's great that you guys are all here. And my journey actually started out at the university when we tried to collect data on China. So this is social sciences, so using methods of computer science to do research. And what we did is try to find out how does a government interact with its citizens online. And if you go to China or Southeast Asia, you will find out that they are in certain spaces way more digitalized than we are here in Austria. And this is kind of what we started out in 2016. So we try to collect data on how does government interact with citizens when they bring up complaints on the websites. And well, you might think, is this really a time-critical business? And if you know how the censorship in China works, it is very time-critical. Because censorship in China works in a way that you can publish your things on social media, and maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, the censors kick in and they censor your post. So this was really so important for the research that we were doing in trying to find out how does censorship work actually in China. And therefore, you really need to build a reliable system. And well, we started out with just the Python and the Postgres database. And at some point, you hit the dead end, and you cannot make it any further. And then we ended kind of distributed systems. Well, we tried to do it on our own in a bare metal system with VMs and load balancers and a distributed database. And we very soon found out that it's very hard. And then you, well, try to find out how can we build distributed systems easily. And we entered, of course, Docker and then Kubernetes. And in this way, kind of, Kubernetes helped us to understand China better. And the data that we collected is really the largest data set in the world on citizen and government interaction in China, which I'm very proud and will be data sets for China researchers for the next decade. And then for me personally, you at some point finish your university studies and the funds for research also run out at some point if you don't get new grants. And so entering CNCF territory, and I was like, so how did I start out with Kubernetes is you enter it in YouTube and find the first video that pops up and you watch it. And I'm not the only one who did it, because this video has 7.8 million views. And I think it's actually redone because it's only 3 years old and this must have been uploaded initially much earlier. So, and actually this is also a connection to Vienna, because Nana is based in Vienna, which I found out way later. And after that, I joined Ecosio, which is a EDI service provider, which provides infrastructure for businesses to do EDI. And if you ever want to build a really cool multi-cloud, working in multi-cloud ecosystem with amazing technicians, apply to them. This really took my experience with working with Kubernetes and cloud to a way different level, and I learned so much there. And I think at some point you hit this point where you think the more you learn, the less you know, or the more you learn, the more you know how much you don't know. And this was really there. And for me, the first time I went to KubeCon was really kind of an explosion of ideas, people, and things to know. And this was actually for me in 2022, so I'm way newer to the community than Eric. So you don't have to be have to work with Kubernetes 15 years before you can stand here and talk. So, and for me, what is really a key takeaway is actually, I don't know if you know this guy. That's Thomas, and this is the first time I met him. It was at the booth at KubeCon 2022, and Andy Grabner was also there. And it was just great to see that you can build great products even if you're not in Silicon Valley. You can build cool stuff and interact with the people, and they're also distributed across Europe. For me, this was really an eye-opener. And when I was there at the pre-conference days, I just was there drinking a beer, and Simon Foster came up to me and we just had a chat. Just a random guy was there alone, so you need to talk to people. And it turns out that he's actually the CNCF cartographer's co-chair, and was really into the community. And one thing that I will never forget is his everyone can contribute. And I think this is really some key takeaway for me. And this is something that goes beyond just the Kubernetes product, is the ecosystem and the community that the CNCF fosters and creates. Everyone is welcome. Everyone can do something. If you don't want to write Go code, you can write documentation. If you want to organize something, there is so much work to do, and everyone can be part of it. And you guys are all here, which is great, but we need to take this spirit, I think, out, spread this world, spread the word to the people who are still running uncontainerized, unkubernetes workloads and make their lives way harder than they need to. And I think this positivity is really a key asset to spreading the word and building the community. And therefore, since this is 10 years Kubernetes, but I think we should really focus and thank the people that make it possible that we have this community. And it's just a coincidence that I also started collecting the meetup groups. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's organizing things like the KCD Austria last year, the Vienna DevOps and Security, Cloud Native Computing Vienna, the platform engineering team, which is also great that they started a new meetup in Vienna, and also the eBPF Vienna group. So there's all very interesting topics where people are enthusiastic about it, and you can just go there for free. And I think they do not get enough applause for the work that they're doing. So please let's give them all a hand for the people who are here. So thank you, guys.
So thank you for this nice talk and for your experiences with the Cloud Native community. And what I have to say as a CNCF ambassador and so on, in the last few years, I was working in the Cloud Native community. Got to know lots of people, and I got to know many new friends there. And so if you are in such meetups, talk to each other, share your knowledge, and also discuss things when you are not at meetups, because then you will get the most out of it. And with this, I didn't have to do too much with Ricardo, but I hope we will also get new friends now. So the stage is yours now.
Thank you very much. Okay, 5 minutes started now. So we heard about 2019 operators and the operator SDK. That's where my story starts. I started using the operator SDK to build some, let's say, auto-scaling on Kubernetes on custom metrics. KEDA, Kubernetes event-driven autoscaler, started there as well. We did something similar. We did, on a custom network, we had to do some scheduling of pods on different nodes based on bandwidth and latency. And that's where it starts. And my first point for today is Kubernetes is a cool enabler. You can, it's a big hammer, and you can solve all your life problems with it. And I'm here to prove it today. So you start from, auto-scaling of custom things. And then I started actually a bit before I lied. I did some 5G digital twin research, doing some simulations of Kubernetes, connecting laptops together over Wi-Fi. My friend's laptop was Node, my laptop was the master node, and we were just doing things, and it was fun and it was working. And then a long pause I had for a few years. I only saw Kubernetes like in the cloud. I did container services, I use functions, I use virtual machines, iPhones. I worked in different companies, but I couldn't really use Kubernetes there. A couple of years ago, I got back to Kubernetes, and it was cool. And my second point for today is, once you start going to meetups, once you start going to KubeCon or to these events, you really see the community. And the community is great. It's what makes Kubernetes great. There's a lot of people there that spend their time making these tools amazing and making them work for you. So be there, contribute. It's great. You can probably not solve all your life problems with it, but I mean, some of them, sure. That's it.
So thank you. And with this, I think, do I have another speaker? Okay, perfect. So I didn't forget anyone. I would say we will do a short 5 minutes break, and then we will hear from Katharina about the cloud native ecosystem. I think. Is this a good idea, or do we have another talk? No. Then I think we have a large cloud native ecosystem, and sometimes too large. And Katharina will tell us something about it. But let's make 5 minutes break and then start.
Yeah, happy birthday, Kubernetes, and happy birthday to the tool that is making my and hopefully your day-to-day life very interesting as well. Before we jump into the talk, who am I actually to talk about all of that? My name is Kati, or actually Katharina, but everybody just calls me Kati. I'm a platform engineer at Dynatrace, but at least I believe I don't have quite the traditional DevOps, Kubernetes, platform engineering background. And the reason for that is I actually studied mobile computing first to become an app developer. And then after 3 years, I was like, okay, cool, I can build apps now, but how do I actually build apps that are nice for the users? So what I did is I added my master's degree in human-centered computing. And in there, we did something that probably would make most of my colleagues run for the hills, because lots of our time we spent on sticking around, clustering, writing post-its. And actually, it was fun. We were like putting a lot of focus on the user. We were trying to find out how we can implement applications, how we can create products that actually that the users actually want to use in the end, and not just what we think is useful, because we found out very often those two actually differ. And well, then I did the next logical thing. I started working. And as you can imagine, as a mobile developer. And this feeler looked like when developing an application. I was there, I was creating UIs, I was super happy about it. I was creating things the user could interact with, and where I thought, hey, that could be nice. Maybe I'm one day in public transport and see somebody using my application. How cool would that be? Unfortunately, it never happened. But yeah, at the same time, this was me too. And this was actually me when I had to deal with pipelines, with continuous integration, with continuous delivery, with everything after my feature was done. Because I wanted to focus on the cool stuff, right? I wanted to do like the best user experience possible. I wanted to get my features, maybe my bug fixes out. And that was it. Everything after that was just like repetitive tasks I had to do. I actually didn't know what I was doing. I was super confused. I hated it. And I think sometimes I really looked like that. But yeah, that's it. So how did I end up here at the 10 years of Kubernetes party, DevOps meetup, security meetup, platform engineering meetup launch, and so on? Speaking actually about Kubernetes, how Kubernetes and DevOps has brought so much joy to my life. Well, definitely not the field that has changed because I joined it, right? So it's actually the different. My perspective on the whole thing has changed. And I actually, with a lot of luck and not wanting to be impolite, but not talking to people in coding interviews, actually, I ended up here. And by doing that, I learned that there is not just this operations thing and also not just DevOps, but there is also platform engineering. And with platform engineering, we are suddenly interacting with the user, with the developer again, because in this case, we have the chance to empower developers, to create self-service platforms for them, or actually, as I like to call it, we can create the self-service heaven for developers, where they can go to after the feature, after the cool stuff is done, they can consume it, and they can actually easily get their artifact into production. And suddenly I noticed, hey, where is the big difference? I mean, before I was building mobile applications, of course, I had a lot of front end in there. I was using Java, Kotlin, whatever. But still, I was building stuff for users. And suddenly I saw DevOps platform engineering is not just about doing repetitive tasks over and over again, getting tickets, completing them, and that's it. But suddenly I noticed we are interacting with the user again. And by that, we can have a direct impact on the day-to-day life of developers. And the best thing, it's not people that I maybe see on public transport one day, but it's people in my company that I can go to and that I can actually ask, hey, how are you doing? How do you like the new feature? Are you using it? No, why not? And so on. And by that, I learned it's actually not that much difference, but it's much, much more interesting because my end users are much closer. And the second nice thing for me is the whole ecosystem that has evolved around Kubernetes. I know no cloud native presentation without this screenshot, right? And it's finally the first presentation from me where it fits. And many people are presenting this as a bad thing because it's too complex. Not a single person can understand, right? It's so hard to follow along. And I totally agree with that. But at the same time, I see it as a huge possibility for learning. Just check out how many open source tools we have here and how many of them we can explore, how many of them we can watch. Some of them will graduate. We can think and discuss about why this happened. Some of them will not get adopted that well. We can do the same thing. And we can learn from all of those tools, which is amazing. And yeah, Kubernetes is 10 years old now. I'm pretty sad that I didn't see the start of Kubernetes like Eric did, for example. But maybe I will see the start of another cool tool. And yeah, to me, it's pretty exciting. Of course, it's complicated, it's hard, but pretty cool at the same time. Okay, so where's the catch? There has to be a catch, right? It's all too good to be true. And for me, one of the biggest catches in platform engineering is that platform engineers are very often those traditional DevOps people or operations people, or at least sometimes those traditional operations people. And suddenly, those people, or we actually, are building user interfaces of a platform to developers with self-service capabilities. The developers need to consume those capabilities in one way or the other, right? So what we are doing is we are providing a user interface for them. No matter if that's in CLI, if it's an HTTP API, if you're doing GitOps, it could be a Git repository. If it's a developer portal like Backstage, Cortex, or whatever, or if it's something else, or maybe even a combination of those, which would be true in most cases, I guess. And yes, unfortunately, a CLI is a user interface too. The user is interacting with it, so no excuses for us. But in my opinion, the value of a platform does not only come from the capabilities it has, from the possibilities a developer has with it, but also how well they are connected to each other and how well the developer can interact with the platform to actually achieve what they want to achieve. So understanding this was really an important part for me. So how can you now go ahead and, oh, sorry, I forgot one. I forgot the most important slide in my presentation, actually. If you ignore all of that, you might end up like this poor folk on Reddit who said, hey, we've spent months building our platform. Our developers hate it. I don't understand why. Help me. And actually, I read a bit through the thread. It was also cross-posted somewhere. People discussed it. And I think what they did was they were sitting in their room, developing the platform, developing what they think cool, just like we did in our studies. Then they threw it over the wall and said, hey, we built something cool, use it. Of course, it didn't solve the problems the developers had, and so on, and nobody wanted to use it. So platform engineering, in my opinion, doesn't work just like that, sitting in your room, developing something for weeks or months, throwing it over and thinking people will like it. Nobody would do app development in that way, so why would you redo platform engineering in that way? And now, how do we actually build a successful platform? Of course, this is my experience, my very own opinion, but those are 5 points that I think are very useful. The first one is really find your very own needs. If every company would have the same needs for platforms, we could buy it. We could simply use an existing one. For startups, that maybe works with like smaller platforms like Netlify or something like that. But for example, for us at Dynatrace, it doesn't work. So we are building one, and we are doing our best to fit the needs of our developers. From that, actually, we get the next point, which is have a clear mission in mind. If you know what you're building for, what the developers are needing in your platform, you can create a mission. You can say, I want to achieve this. And you can define KPIs to actually make that whole thing measurable, so that you can compare yourself against yourself from one month ago or 1 year ago and say, hey, look, we achieved this, we got a bit worse there, so how can we improve this, and so on. The next thing is design for a good user experience. And for this one, I'm not talking about making things pretty. Of course, that's important too. But designing for user experience also means connecting components well and actually making it usable for the developer. So instead of having to open like 5 pull requests here and interacting with the CLI here, doing an API call over there, and so on, you could combine that into one well-documented flow where it's much, much easier for the developer to follow. And be careful about RTFM, so read the effing manual-driven design here. If you have to read like a book of documentation before being able to do something, it will not be enjoyable for you and probably not for developers as well. Yeah, the next thing, start small. We can copy so many things from software engineering. They are building successful products for decades now. And what have they learned there? They learned to build an MVP, a minimum viable product. So why not apply the same thing to platform engineering and build the thinnest viable platform, the TVP first? And this could even be a wiki page, depending on your needs and your mission. It could be a very simple thing. But you can already give it out, get feedback, improve, iterate from there, and so on. And the last thing, make it observable. If you have measurable KPIs, that's nice. But if you don't measure them, what do you have them for? And so on. Observe how many time people are spending on your platform. What's the return rate? How many people like cancel something because they cannot get along with it? How long does it need to deploy an application? Is your platform even healthy? And so on. All of that can, and in my opinion, should be observed to build a successful platform. And in the end, it can be all trimmed down to one sentence, which is just treat your developer platform as a product. Just like any other mobile application, in my case, back in the days, just like a website, whatever. It is a product. Your customer's internal, which makes it even better. Because like that, you can talk to them, you can approach them, you can ask them for feedback, and so on. And as in every product, it's nice if many people come together and develop on it, right? So if you have diverse teams, it's much more likely that you will build a successful product, actually. So this means diversity and perspective matter in product engineering. And this is actually also like, there are many studies on that. I just have one over here. And it's actually in diversity, there are two different things. There's on the one hand, there is the inherent diversity. So the one you're born with, it's like where you're from, your gender, and so on. But then there is also acquired diversity. Like, for example, I bring a diverse perspective to my team because I studied mobile computing. You might bring a diverse perspective because you did the China study thingy. I forgot the name. I'm really sorry. And so on. So really, every perspective in the team matters. And if every perspective matters, it means that no matter where you're from, what you did before, and so on, your perspective is important in the team to build the best product, the best platform possible. And you know what? The cool thing about cloud native, about Kubernetes, is it's all open source. So people with very different perspectives are coming together and building something together. And it's the same there. Every perspective matters, so your perspective matters as well. We already learned how open the community is and how open they are for contributions, and really everybody can contribute to the CNCF ecosystem. So let's see which possibilities we have to do so. First of all, you can become a mentor. If you're already an experienced developer, engineer, whatever you want to call yourself, you can become a mentor in the CNCF ecosystem, join a program, and actually you get guided through there, and it looks pretty cool. I haven't done it, unfortunately, but when doing the research for this one, I thought I should consider this one. The most obvious one, you can contribute to CNCF projects. But there is also a less obvious part hidden in there. You can not only do code contributions, you can contribute documentation or whatever. And if you want to get started with this and don't know where to start, just go to a project you like. They probably have some GitHub issues labeled as good first issue, and they will be happy for you to join, because everybody is. It's open source, it's community, it's amazing. The next thing is you can join a technical advisor. I unfortunately don't know much about this one, but we've got our expert Thomas here. Create or join a community group. Like today, I think all of you are contributing to this community today by just coming, by interacting with each other, by exchanging, talking, and so on. If there is no meetup in your region, create one. If there is one and you want to do one on another topic, create one. Doesn't matter. Everybody's nice, everybody's welcome. That's it. And with that, thanks a lot for listening. But before we stop it, I have like one thing to make. If you can't get enough of Kubernetes, of community, join us in October at KCD Austria. There are quite a few organizers here, so just approach us. We would be happy to see you there. Early bird is still going on. The CFP is open, so submit your talks. Would be great to see you. And with that, thank you.
So thanks, Katharina, for this nice talk. I think we have time for a few questions.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to answer questions?
Yes, of course. So if there are questions, please feel free to ask them.
How do you establish your feedback culture about platforms? Like you said, okay, a platform can be shitty, can be cool. How do you get that information?
Thank you. What should I do with that? Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah, it should be.
Is it?
No, yes, it's the one for the live stream.
Okay. So I repeat the question. Okay, I don't repeat the question.
Okay.
How do you establish that feedback culture?
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good question. And at the same time, and at the same time, a pretty hard thing to do, actually. So I'm happy that you asked this. I'm in the lucky position. I joined the platform engineering team here. And I think just in the whole company, we have a quite good feedback culture. So you can approach people, you can talk to them, you can say them, maybe not in an impolite way, but you can go there and say, hey, I didn't like how we did that because of X, Y, Z, and so on. So really don't think it's only a thing that is related to platform engineering, but really a thing that is related to the whole company culture. Because if you can't go to people and tell them, hey, I think we should do this differently, and so, or something like that, I don't think, at least I wouldn't like to work there. So I think this is the important thing to start. And then also being aware that your customers are close to you is an important thing. Because in the beginning, it was always like, we're building things for them and they are very far away. But actually, we're building things for developers and they are very close to us. And understanding this, I think, is a very good first step.
Is this a microphone too?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the talk. And so in my case, I would be both sides. I would be the platform engineer and the developer as well for my own project. So would you recommend to doing this, to develop your own platform, for example, that I have to repeat myself again and again for some fun projects and so on? And what would you recommend?
If it's for fun or side projects at home, I would recommend whatever is fun to you. Like I'm building a very small web service at home and I said, hey, I want to build it as microservices because I want to learn it. Is it the best thing to do? Probably not, because it's way more effort than the other way around. But I'm interested in it. It's fun for me, so it's good for me. And I think automating repetitive tasks in some way is definitely a good idea, no matter if you're doing it at home, if you're doing it at work, if you're doing it for yourself or somebody else. For me, it's always if I have to repeat the task a couple of times. And of course, if you do it in your home lab or whatever, you're building your own platform with that just for your very own needs, which is pretty cool, I think.
And what would you recommend to start with?
I mean, I'm the kind of person, I don't like learning for where I don't have a goal. So I always choose a project and then I say, hey, I'm taking a look at this because it like gets me further on my project. So it really depends on what you're doing, I would say, what is fun for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all.
Thank you, Katharina. So then I think it's time for a second speaker for 10 minutes.
Ist ein Magnet? Okay. Okay. Jetzt haben wir es.
Constanze spoke mir schuldig, dass ich
You can, I'll leave it on the copyright for now. Upside down with this. Wasn't there a second mic? You have it on. You just say my name or something.
Constanze. I think she will introduce a new certification, right? So, at least told me so.
Yeah.
And whom of you has some Kubernetes certification? Whom of you is aware of the Kubestronaut certification? And whom of you is trying to get there? So it's a really bad day for you because you really need another one. So Constanze will tell you more about it, and so the stage is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. And yeah, it was a great pleasure that when you called me last week, and I'm really happy that at least my cough has gone to the point that I can talk again. Yeah, as I'll tell you, and maybe you've already seen the announcements. So this is the first preview of the new certification, and we've been developing it for a while. It's it's the Cloud Native Confidence Certification, CKC. Copyright due where it's originally due. So who am I? I currently work for a bunch of universities. 10 years and 8 months ago exactly it was that I stopped working for something quite different. I was working until that point for a space probe, one of the largest space probes that was supposed to fly in the last decade. However, it did not fly because there's something happened in 2008, which was the liquidity crisis. And that led to $60 billion, the US Congress deciding that $60 billion would be taken out of the NASA budget. And that meant that as a consequence, the missions, NASA dropped out of the missions. And well, you now probably know from this post, James Webb made it up there, but the other two didn't. So, but between that date, which I remember very much, lots of tears, there was a frustrating period of which many people tried to save these missions. But for me, it was then in 2014 that I finally dropped out of it. And now today, the mission is actually back on the roster. If you were to look it up, it's scheduled to fly very soon in 2032. And now people literally ask me, it's like, that is such a cool thing, you know, it has such an image, space science. Would you want to go back? And my answer is absolutely not. And this is the story of why. So what changed? And the cool thing about life is that on hindsight, things become clear. Maybe a little excursion on this relatively famous conditioning experiment that probably today would not be allowed anymore. Because what they did back then, so they took who is not familiar with this conditioning experiment? Okay, cool. So what they did back then is they took a bunch of dogs, lots of dogs, statistically relevant number of dogs, and divided them. They also put them on a floor that was having an electroshock. And half of the dogs had a lever that they could press to switch the shock off. The other half did not. So they had the lever, but the lever wouldn't do anything to the shock duration. So they did this after a while, and then comes the crux. So they put the dogs in this box where there's a fence in the middle, and the one side has the shocks, and the other side is safe. So now you put the dogs that had the lever that they could press so that the shock would stop, put it on the side, and relatively quickly they figure out that they can escape, can jump over the fence, right? But the sad part is, so if you put the other dogs in there and you shock them, well, you ring the bell and you shock them, well, they just lie down and wimp, essentially. And neither incentivizing them nor threatening them makes them explore that option that they would have. It actually takes taking them out at least once that they learn, oh, there is another option. And the point is, this is called learned helplessness. And in fact, you see this very much today in large corporations. And literally, it's just that it's not as obvious and they don't use electroshocks. So, right. So now I was lucky in hindsight, right? I was taken forcefully out of this box, but I was still conditioned back then. So now the question is, how do you learn confidence? Is there like a training course? Maybe. So when it comes to training, maybe we ask some people that are sports psychologists or performance coaches that work with marathon runners. And the insight that they have is that a person will not outperform nor underperform their self-image. And that the crucial thing is actually the way you talk to yourself. So, and that means that you have an internal image of yourself that determines how well you perform at the marathon race. And how to change that. This is also an important point, that this is not an absolute thing. It's a thing that is relative, and you can influence it with external actions. And this is where self-determined action comes in as a method of changing it. And the most important, or the easiest way to learn something is actually to create it yourself and invent it and build it and do it many times over and learn to be successful. Which is why I'm going to show you a couple of training units, how that actually works with our birthday baby here. So, but before we deploy our application, our confidence application, we have to think about is it stateful and stateless? Well, humans are stateful. That's the first thing we have to find out. So one of, I guess, the most defining components of Kubernetes is the control loops. So we have a bunch of control loops that basically act on feedback to stabilize the system that contains many different agents. So the most common one is actually a PID control loop. And if you want to quick refresh what that is, so this here describes basically the PD loop, which is a closed solution. So you have the inverse pendulum problem here that you see solved here. So the normal pendulum is the one that swings freely, has a stable attractor solution, and then there's the unstable attractor of the pendulum solution, which is the upside down one. And if you want to calculate the force necessary, the torque necessary to bring it back and keep it there, well, this is the solution, which is proportional and differential. And so that is the PD controller, and in Kubernetes we usually find the PID controller. So, but one important thing about control is it's an illusion. And as you just all described very well, one thing that we learn when we work with Kubernetes or with the cloud native ecosystem, it's very uncontrollable. We learn on-the-spot problem solving. We learn Googling Stack Overflow. And definitely, I mean, sometimes I'm surprised by how cool I stay at complete everything red failures. And yeah, we'll deal with it. Second training unit, role-based access control. I know this is everybody's absolute favorite thing, you know. And well, we know, of course, from all the best practices that we need to use the least privilege principle. Now, if we talk about interacting with people, this is actually in trying to learn confidence. That means that we should not interfere too much with other people or help them too much to take away that critical reinforcement learning, their internal control loop, where they have that experience of like, hey, I did it. Like I failed for a while and then I did it. Because what help in too much interference, too much privilege would mean here that we don't give people to actually the chance to reinforce that new way of thinking that they have created themselves. Training unit number 3, eventual consistency and fault tolerance. The second most important component, I would say, in Kubernetes is etcd. It's a distributed key-value database where all the configuration of Kubernetes gets stored. And inside it, there's a append of log, and it's distributed typically, and the distribution algorithm is Raft, and is a quorum-based algorithm, and the whole point of it is that if one can fail, it still survives. If two fails, well, it's a bit critical, but as long as one comes back up, the system survives. And what we can learn from this is that Kubernetes never gives up. If we look at my POC deployment down here, I mean, any human would have given up on that one after 7,807 retries, but Kubernetes does not give up on you. And yeah, training unit number 4 here, mandatory slide. Yeah, contributing. Yeah, it can be overwhelming, right? It can be overwhelming, all these changing open source tools that we have here in the background. And there's something cool though, because we know the people that are here, we know the maintainers. So what we can do, we can bring ourselves in a frame where we are actually part of that change. We contribute, or we at least try something out. So this is actually a classroom example from last year when I taught the class about Spiffy Inspire, which is the distributed identity mesh. And the cool thing was not just that that is actually a really cool thing, but it was that 6 weeks later after the class, after we had built it, GCP went GA with the feature. And I mean, just also for me to see it from scratch, and now it's big Google is not big evil Google, but it's like, oh, this is like kind of my product that they use. I like, well, it's you identify with it, and that means you are not at the mercies of big bad corporations. Training unit number 5. The readiness probe. If you know that book, and probably many do, it's one of the first patterns, I think 2 or 3, that you need the liveness probe, health probe, and the readiness probe. And well, one thing that we learn is that the readiness probe tells you some things, but it will not tell you whether your deployment as a whole is actually going to succeed. And here, tiny private backstory, or like personal backstory. So this is the private cloud that we run across the universities. And so my office mate was the senior engineer that dealt with the lower 2 layers, which is the metal and OpenStack. And my job was mostly the automation here and the platform layer. Now, we were at a milestone and just doing the pen testing. And then my boss calls me over and says, like, you know, your office mate, well, you'll have to deal without him for an indeterminate amount of time. And I was like, okay, and now what? Well, so I had to manage to deal with this entire thing alone for a while. And I was so not ready, because especially on the network components, 2 years ago was really shaky about it. But the cool thing about Kubernetes is the user experience of the discoverability as well, because I can try it out and compare to the old-fashioned systems. Like, I have the automation, I have the infrastructure as code. I can actually go step by step and discover what has actually been built there, and I can teach it to myself as long as I believe in that systematic method. All right, encryption, or training unit number 6, cert manager. Now we have Zero Trust, we have the CRA incoming NIST, DORA, you name the regulation. Encryption is a must, absolutely. And I really, really find the story of Let's Encrypt very, very inspiring, because maybe you know the backstory. So what they did was to respond to the challenge of the NSA tapping into the AT&T backbone. And basically a bunch of people decided to do a nonprofit and create a certificate authority themselves. And now they're issuing certificates for more than half of the internet, essentially. And the key thing to take away from there is, if you frame something as a challenge you can take on, rather than something dreadful like encryption, then you can actually overcome it, as long as you see yourself as the active component. Coming to the last training unit. What do you do if you're in a loop? Well, one thing is to change the update strategy. And I love this quote. This is basically the European version of Sun Tzu, the guy who wrote the... Anyway, so what he says, and I think it's quite insightful, is that the very essence of strategy is creating and protecting freedom for action. So, and if you think actually about a rollout strategy where you say like 25% and unavailable, that is in fact the availability, that freedom for action for the new containers to come up. And this is the story that was actually in the prospect, in the abstract, is how you do that, what happens when you take an SAP developer experience from 10 years ago and create freedom of action. So what you see here is the transport landscape, so the system landscape in a typical SAP development. So you have one development system, one test system, one management system, maintenance system, and so on. So they're all single-tenant applications, single-tenant database for all developers, typically. And at the time, at this client, we were anticipating 11 teams distributed across the entire world to work on a not yet enforced regulation. And well, this has been done many times. It's a very stable, very tested thing. We all know SAP is indestructible. And this is the CI process, in fact. So you have these database things that you put into the system and use binaries out of one to the other one. You load them into the database in the right order. And then eventually you have them transported into another system. So said, works fine. But at that time, Docker came around and I had heard about it. And I was like, well, maybe we could multiply these environments. And SAP, of course, said, you are insane, the second time in my life. But coming to, again, something in our head, we have barriers. They are real. This is the record of the first mile being run under 4 minutes in May 6, 1954. Before that, it was considered impossible. When was it run the second time under 4 minutes? 6 weeks later. So the question was, can we break the ice the same way? There were some technical things that we had to hack at the time. That thing is huge, and it just for the installer, you need 46 gigabytes. And yeah, and at the time, Docker was new, and yeah, let's just say that. But eventually, we put that thing on a Docker Compose on a VM in Azure, and it took 40 minutes to boot, and stable is something different. But we broke that 4 minute mile. We had the first subtop, and what's what we called them. And the other thing that we did, we shoestringed a Git process for the binaries and offered basically a self-service portal for people to consume the SAP product. And then we put the data, the actual financial data, on Kafka, and suddenly the whole thing exploded. People used it for development, they used it for testing, they used it for experimenting with actually how to interpret the regulation. And they also, then the actuaries at some point wanted it to use it for forecasting actually the financial results. Okay, but also what happened is that our budget completely exploded. So this was obviously not the final stage, this was a very intermediate stage. But the cool thing that happened there was, and I hadn't anticipated it, it was this wonderful balance between having the right level of feedback and the right level of agency of people, that they could suddenly do something that they never done before. And so to be part of that was quite inspiring. And that was really what answers the question, why would I never go back to the old way of thinking, is because I saw and experienced what we all see here in the open source community. It's this positive sum game, that what we all do together is much, much more than what one person could do. And we could, in other words, describe it as an emergent phenomenon. And this is also why I believe that open source is never, well, as long as we keep that thing alive, open source is not going to die, no matter what they write on LinkedIn. Right, and bringing me to my last slide. So I hope I can all invite you to train yourself in CI. And thank you so much for listening.